I thought what I would tell you about is this painting by Samuel Stevenson Finley and how it features in my new book. So before I do that, let me give you a little bit of background so we can be sure we're all on the same page. So first of all, most of you know that my book series was inspired by the life of my great aunt, Jessie Roberts Currant. Jessie was born in 1903 in Brampton, Ontario. When she was 100 years of age, she moved back to Brampton. I had always had a close relationship with Jessie, but I had an even closer one after she moved back to Brampton. She lived only 10 minutes from my home in a retirement home there, a senior's home. And I would visit her every week, and she would tell me stories about her life growing up. Now, I had helped Jessie move on other occasions, and I had certainly been in many of her apartments and suites and rooms in her seniors and long-term care homes over about 40 years. And I can tell you that every time she moved from one to another, she had to downsize. She was always moving to smaller premises, and she always had to get rid of things. But one thing she never got rid of was that painting. It was very special to her. So another background thing to keep in mind as we go through this talk today is the timing. The Beleaguered takes place during the war. The Mending, it takes place between August of 1918 and 1931. So most of it occurs in the 1920s. And this is relevant for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is the first book in the series where Jessie is an adult. She's no longer a witness to the things that happen to her older family members or to older people in the town. She's no longer reporting on what other people did. She's now an adult, and she is firmly part of all of the stories. It also means that she is old enough to fall in love, and you'll see soon that she did in this book. The other thing that's relevant about the timing being in the 1920s is the fact that this is the time that the Group of Seven was painting. This was their heyday, if you will, and we all know how great their influence was on the artistic community. It's a legacy they still have to this day. And I thought I couldn't write this book without paying some sort of homage to them. In The Mending, Jessie, as I say, falls in love. The man of her dreams is a fellow named Henry. He is the same age as she is, 23 when they first meet, and he is from Britain. He immigrates to Canada after the war, as so many single men did. And in my story, Jessie is introducing him to many things in and around Brampton where she lives, including the Forks of the Credit, which is a large conservation area in Caledon, north of Brampton. And Jessie and her family had many, many delightful picnics and other exercises of recreation up there as a child. And in fact, she did throughout her whole life. So as I say, one day, Jessie takes him to the Forks of the Credit. It's just the two of them. They have this picnic lunch. There's a certain amount of illicit behavior that occurs, and it's not probably what you think it is, because remember that in Ontario through most of the 1920s, we are in a period of temperance or prohibition. So the illicit activity had to do with what was in a flask. And there may have been a little bit more. You'll have to read the book to see. After their picnic lunch, the two of them go for a walk. And what I'm going to do right now is just read a little bit of an excerpt from this book. It's about maybe a minute or a minute and a half long, and then I will tell you what happens to that painting after this part of the book. So they've just had their lunch. It did involve a flask. It was a couple of hours later when we walked down the hill. Through the binoculars I brought with us, Henry saw three men painting near a stream in the valley below. We chose to make them the destination of our hike. By the time we reached the enclave in which they were working, two of them were packing to leave. "It's the light," the remaining painter said. "It's changed again." He invited us to watch him work on the condition that we were quiet. For half an hour, we watched in silence as he painted the stream and the little waterfall before us. Then he put his brush in a can of water, reached into a bag in the wagon near him, extracted a flask, and sat down on a large rock near us. "I had a good day," he said, nodding toward his wagon. Resting on its edge were two small 8x10 watercolors. Each displayed the little stream before us, the roundness of the pink and brown rock in its center, and the cone-like shape of the green trees in the background were all slightly exaggerated for effect. The canvas that was still on his easel was of the same scene, but on a larger scale. Although the prospect was exactly the same in each painting, the light varied. So I'll show you the picture again. So hopefully you can see it there. So I'll stop reading, but I'll tell you that after that, the two of them have a good conversation with this artist whose name is Samuel Stevenson Finley. He was born in Ireland. He lived in Ulster, but he left Ulster in 1911 and came to Toronto. He became a painter as a hobby. He was actually a teacher as his career, and fun fact, if you will, he taught at Central Tech School in Toronto on Bathurst, and that is the same school that Jessie's Aunt Lil taught at. Now, those of you who have read the book will know about zany Aunt Lil, as I call her. So in real life, her real life aunt did work with this artist, Samuel Stevenson Finley. And he followed the group of seven. He painted landscapes, and I think he tried to paint them in their method, but he didn't restrict his painting only to landscapes. He also painted, bridges and buildings and that sort of thing. Okay, so at the end of their exchange, they end up having quite an exchange with this artist, and they learn more about the group of seven. But before they leave, Henry says to Jessie, "We've had such a great day. Why don't I buy you that painting?" And she says, "Oh, I really couldn't have you do that." There's an exchange that occurs about that, but eventually she allows him to buy this painting, which is called Rocks in the Stream in the Morning. And he buys a painting as well. It's exactly the same painting, but it was painted later in the day. So his was called Rocks in the Stream at Noon. Now, I'm not going to tell you on this Facebook Live what happens with their romance. You'll have to read the book to see. But I will tell you that eventually these two paintings become separated. Like all twin objects in good stories, the twins get separated, and they aren't united again until 2003. And that forms the backdrop for the final chapter in my book. Jessie is 100 years old. These two paintings have been united, and it affords her an opportunity to tell the readers what happened to the rest of her life between 1931 and 2003. It's also a great ending, I think, for Bramptonians and for people who've been following the evolution of Brampton in my series, which started out as a very small town in 1907. By 2003, of course, it's several hundred thousands of people of population. It's still really a different city than what Brampton is today, but it's a whole lot closer to what it is today than what it was in 1931 when the mending ends. So I hope you found this of interest. And if you have not yet ordered your copy of The Mending, please go online and do so.